Moving on to our next segment, a virtual presentation titled Changing Global Apparel Manufacturing Dynamics and India's Positioning. We are delighted to have Mr. David Birnbaum, Managing Director of Third Horizon Limited, joining us virtually from Thailand. Projects in over 36 countries, his work involves developing and improving national garment industries in Asia, North America, Latin America, and Africa. He is the author of 14 books covering all aspects of garment industry, including the detailed India benchmark study on behalf of AEPC and Government of India. Mr. Birnbaum is also a qualified pattern maker. Let's welcome Mr. Birnbaum for his presentation with a round of applause.
First of all, I want to thank Mr. Pierre Messipal, the President of GTC, Colonel Kapoor, Director General, and all the members and associates of the GTC. This is an important time for the industry. It's a time of tremendous change. And India is one of the very few countries, particularly in Asia, that has the potential to look forward to a very good future. Let me say this. Most consultants deal in incremental change. They start off with a company, who you are, what you're doing now, and they give you the tools to move ahead, to become more productive, to become more efficient, to become more profitable, going forward in the future. I am a strategic development specialist. I turn it upside down. I start in the future. This is where the industry is headed. And this is what you have to do to become a more important player in that industry. We're going to be talking about the supplier side. That's you, the factory side, and the models of the supplier side. The standard model that most people use today is based on FOB price. I call it the China model because, let's face it, they are the largest in the world. They have the largest textile industry, they have the largest garment industry, they have really well-trained sewers, they have finely educated managers, merchandisers, technical people, they have great logistics, and they have invested a fortune in social overhead capital. What makes them great is that China is the easiest place to work. For example, if the fabric is available locally, and the price is good and the quality is fine, that's not a problem. But if it's not available locally, then you have to import it. Importing fabric for garment exports, most places in Asia, is a kiss of death. Because the government has a vested interest in supporting the textile industry. And they put all these obstacles in your way. Actually, most of us who are professionals who recognize that if you pay off people, you'll probably be able to get the goods. But not in China. In China, the government doesn't take favorites. In China, if fabric's not available and has to come from Germany or someplace, then the factory will take care of it because it is the easiest place to import fabric for export purposes. What makes China great is one thing. In China, you pay the money and you get the garment on time, as you expect. The problem is that the standard model is failing. When you look at the most recent data from the EU, you can see that in the first 6 months of 2024, imports to the EU fell 30%. The imports to the EU from China fell 30%. The EU is very special. We're talking about it later. As a garment import, the EU and the United States control 60% of the import market. However, 42% is EU, 18% the United States. So that it is by far the largest import market of the world. It is also one of the largest export markets of the world. If you look at China and the EU, put them together, about 58% They're the only places that are in double digits. And as China falls, EU becomes more important. Why are people buying garments with EU? What is special about it? The answer is, first of all, they have their own market. They are less interested in FOB price and more interested in garments. We have to go back and look at the actual cost sheet. A garment is $10 FOB, and the retail price is $100. So that if you think about it, the FOB is 10% of retail, but 90% of retail is not FOB. And if you add in the fabric, the trim, there was a time when the customer said, the buyer went to the factory and said, can you make this? And the factory looked and said, we keep the fabric, we make the garment, this is the price. Today, that guy is gone and replaced by sourcing specialists. The sourcing specialist goes to the mill and negotiates the price. He then goes to the trim suppliers, the buttons, the zippers, the braids, and negotiates their price. Then he goes to the factory and says, this is what I want, this is where you're going to buy the fabric, and this is where you're going to get this big trim. We have to think that in this world, material is about 70% of FOB, which means that the $10 FOB, $7 doesn't belong to the factory. They're left with $3. 97% is outside the factory. What do you have left? You have the CM. You have the labor, you have the overhead, you have the profit. But how much can you actually affect this? Can you go to the workers and say, ladies, I'm sorry, because you're not paying too much? Can you take a cut and pay? Not in this world. What about writing a letter to the electric company and saying, business is not good, can you give me a reduction in the cost of electricity? All you have is the profit. How much money can you make on a $10 FOB? The answer, maybe $1, 10%. Which means that 99% of the FOB price is outside the factory. The question you want to ask on this is why have the customers invited you all these years to get this reduction, 20 cents, 30 cents on the FOB price? If instead of having this meeting in a room, we had it in the sports stadium, and we had 10,000 garment owners and managers in that sports stadium, and I asked the question, why are they attacking you for the few cents rather than looking for the real savings? And I would get one answer, because they're bastards. They want to see us out of business. They will take every penny we have because they're making a fortune. They're buying for 10, they're selling for 100, they got to do it very well. They're not. And this is the problem. If you look at the costing from the customer's point of view, they're not. The garment is $10, takes about $5 for the design, commissions, duty, transportation to get to the store. So it lands in the store for $15. $100, it means there's $85 left over. But there's not, because there's a markdown. The markdown is the difference between the price on the hang tag, $100, and what they get after all the sales and discounts. 30%, $30. So it's not $100, they get paid only $70. And then there's the returns. If you look at the sales for the fourth quarter, 2023, the last holiday season, you'll see that the consumer returned 30% of the goods. They reached a point where the retailer went back to the consumer and said, don't return. We'll give you the money back. Just hold. We don't want to pay the cost of the freight and everything. You just hold the garment. So $100 became $70, $70 became $40, and you bring in the cost of the garment, and it's $25. And they can't make a living on $25. Why? Because they have to pay their own expenses. They have their own salaries, their own expense. And the greatest expense, this is interesting, the greatest expense is marketing and advertising. The average retailer pays more money on marketing and advertising than it pays on sourcing or design. Why? Because they think the consumer is a moron, and the consumer will buy anything if they have enough advertising. And they're not. And the answer is the industry is shrinking. It's getting smaller because the consumer is not buying what they're doing. The stores are not producing the consumer lifestyle. You know that in the United States, the largest retailer of garments in the United States is TJ Maxx. TJ Maxx does not design, TJ Maxx does not produce. TJ Maxx makes a living taking the unsold merchandise from the retailers and selling it at a discount. They are the largest retailer of garments in the United States. Here's the problem. Why? Why aren't the consumers buying? This is the trick. You don't need a specialist for this one. You don't need AI. You don't need a consultant. If you want to go to the best consultant you know, go home to your wife. Ask why isn't she buying? And there are 4 reasons: boring design, crappy fabric, bad make, lousy fit. That's it. Why? Why? I mean, how does this happen? Do you think that the designers, the retailers, without talent? You think that the people in the administration who run it, the management, is stupid? The reason is because they are stuck. They're stuck with trying to get a reduction from the FOB. They're trying to save pennies, and the result is they're working in, they go to the factory and see what they're doing, because they're making some really interesting boutiques. The factories themselves are run by garment people. In Asia, most of the factories are owned by business people, finance specialists, administration people. The guy in Italy, France, Spain, who's running a factory is a garment person. My family and I lived in Florence for 11 years. And next to Florence was Prato, which is the knit capital of the EU. And I would go to Prato with work, I would talk to the guys in the knit factory. This guy really did sweaters. Of course he did sweaters. His grandfather made sweaters. His father spent 40 years making sweaters, and now he's like, he knows everything you know about sweaters. It's not just about the machinery, it's not just about the knitting, it's not about the looping. It's about what the yarn is, what yarn do you want, what count to get the garment that the designer wants. He understands the business, he thinks of it as a product. The woman sitting at the sewing machine in an Italian factory has an opinion about the garment. She likes the garment, doesn't like the garment, mother would like the garment. But the truth is, when she opens the bundle and starts sewing, and she sews a line, and she says, hold on for a second, I couldn't get my head to this neck. And she stops. She raises her hand. The supervisor comes over, they look, he checks it out, they go to the boss, they stop production, and the boss goes to the buying office, they check out, yes, there was a problem with the specs. They changed the specs. The customer lost 82 garments and 2.5 hours of production. In other countries, they would have made the garment, and they would have shipped the garment and arrives in in New York, they open her up and they can't put the head through the neck. And they're wondering what happened. And the factory says, well, the specs, we found the specs. In Europe, you have the advantage of the quality. You know, one of the things you see about it, we lived in Florence, I told you, you look at the people in the street, rich people, people with modern, they're dressed well, they look well, they understand how to give the right impression. We have friends, a woman, only born her money. So she buy a jacket, a skirt, 7,000 euros. But when it came time to find the right blouse, she found the blouse she was looking for on the street from a second-hand guy for 8 euros. Why? Because that blouse went with that jacket, that skirt. That's what they have. But most important, they have the label. You have to accept the fact that there is something more, a cachet, made in Italy, made in France, made in Spain, rather than made in Bangladesh, made in Indonesia. And people will pay for that. This is really what it's about. If you want to be in the fashion industry, if you want to follow the EU model, that's what you need. And there is only one place in Asia that can be done. And you're it. You have really interesting design. You have young people doing good stuff. And people have a sense of color. They have a sense of shape. People have an idea for fashion. It's the same concept, albeit Indian, that they have in Italy or France. Most importantly, you have a possibility of having a label cachet. You have to understand there's a mystique about this. Ask yourself, why do people come to India? They're on holiday, placing bets. They're not coming for the cricket. They got their own cricket. They're not coming for the food, good food, but they have their own good food. They're coming because of India. If you ask the most famous architects in the world today, one of the greatest buildings ever built, they would name two. The Parthenon and India, the Taj Mahal. You accept it because you're part of the culture, but you are a foreigner. A guy, an American, a European, comes and looks at the Taj Mahal. They can't believe that such a building would exist. And of course, it goes with story, with life, but it's a point of view. It's a cultural thing. You look at the temples, you look at the culture goes back thousands of years, and people are discovering that culture, and it's special. They expect special things from India because India is special. You have, the problem that we have with customers in the West is that they are disgusted by the industry. They don't want factories that don't care about their workers, that exploit them. They don't want factories that are shipping goods that are unsustainable. Where does the concept, the modern concept that the individual person is special, unique, and should be supported? Where does the concept come from that the world we live in has been borrowed by us, and we have an obligation to leave it there when we found it? Those are Indian concepts. That's Mahatma Gandhi. You can build an industry based on culture. You have the ability to make the goods, you have the talent to make the goods, you have the way of having the mystique that you get away with that shit. Look, I spend my life in doing strategic development. I tell you to be done. And you bring in the people who do incremental change. You want brand India, there are people who will do this for you. You want to get the factories to run right, the engineering people will do this for you. The future can be yours. 5 years from now, you can be on your way to be the leading fashion country in Asia. It's true, if you're willing to take the steps. Thank you.
So I was saying that before we close this session, I would just like to ask if we have any questions for you from the audience.
Yeah, my question is that brand India is at the macro level. At the micro level, let's talk about brand textile, India is a very divergent country, multi-layers, many Indias within India, If any branding is to be anchored, I read somewhere it has to be some niche you have to create around it, so that that imagery can manifest your branding. So when we talk about branding for Textile India, Textile India, My question is that now we have Bharat Tax, driven by Ministry of Textile, Government of India. And second time they are going to hold it in 2025 February, wherein the pitch is sustainability. Do you think that India can build their branding around the sustainability? Your thoughts, sir?
I worked in Bihar. I worked for the World Bank in Bihar at a time when you only had 2 factories. You can build there. You can build anywhere if people want to make the effort. It's sustainability, ethics is something that you need. One of the things that's happening is that you now, for the first time, you have designers who are actually selling couture garments in Europe. And they are not copies of European designs. They are taken from your culture. You have to be strict about it. You need the right designers, but you also need the right ethical behavior. It's a struggle. It's hard. But the people who do this are going to succeed. You were talking about Inditex. The fact is that Zara, the good thing about Zara is that when they see a problem, if they see a factory acting badly, they do something about it. You have to take the same way. It's a different industry you're building, but that's the industry of the future. What I'm offering here is a plan for the future. It will not be easy. The industry is shrinking. Whole industries are going to disappear. You look at your neighbor, Bangladesh. It used to be the world's second largest garment exporter, and they are now failing. Indonesia is now failing. You have to change from the time. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard, but you can do this. And if you do this, the future will be yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Birnbaum. Can we have a round of applause for his compelling presentation?